we have roll call, please?
Bondgard, Cook,
Present.
Keith,
Here.
Lencioni,
Yes.
Newell,
Yes.
Port,
Present.
Rabchuk,
Yes.
Thompson,
Here.
Wirball.
Here. Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the June 6, 2024 task force minutes.
So move, Keith. Second.
Okay, thank you, John. Any discussion on those? Well, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next issue. Review the June 14th Army Corps communication regarding the Section 519 Fox River connectivity and habitat study. And for that, I'm tossing over to Heather.
Thank you.
She can take it there.
The city, along with all of the other cities and villages along the Fox River, received a communication from the Army Corps on June 14th in which they stated they were going to be embarking upon additional study and assessment, including a programmatic environmental assessment. They did not give us a specific timeline in which this study would take place, but it appears that they are delaying what was the original intended timeline, looking for confirmation from all of the municipalities or commitment to remove the dam by May of 2025. So it appears that that timeline is being delayed. We have reached out to Army Corps and IDNR to ask about a specific timeline. We have not gotten confirmation on exactly what this will look like yet. We do know that this will include additional items that were not studied. I know some of the things that have been discussed exactly at this task force, including hydrology, sediment studies, and additional information. It will also include additional public comment portions of that. This is essentially the summary of the information that we know at this point, but wanted to share that with the task force. You all were sent that communication. We do have a copy of that communication with the city as well, but it does appear that there will be additional information that the task force will need to review once that study is complete, and we will keep you updated as far as when we receive additional information or any confirmation of additional dates.
So we don't have any idea of what the timeline is going to be.
We do not currently. They said that they will be, the quote in their email they sent us is the Corps is working on a template for the letter of intent to either keep or remove that dam to continue with the study, but they will be reaching out to the individual dam owners with a template to confirm that. Just as a reminder, this dam out here is owned by IDNR, so they would be reaching out to IDNR directly, but they have been looping the city into those communications as well. So to date, we have not received anything yet, and neither have any of the other municipalities that I've connected with, but they will be reaching out to us at some point.
Yeah, so I did have some additional conversations with Army Corps of Engineers folks, biologists assigned to the project, and also they call it a division chief or section chief. And so they are basing this programmatic EA on the new CEQ regulations that just came out a couple months ago. So basically changed how NEPA works and is carried out. And they are, along with every agency in the United States, trying to figure out how to implement those new regulations. So they are not even sure if this programmatic analysis can actually be done or not. So they're doing their due diligence internally to figure out if it can be done, how it can be done, and then what they need to do with the existing draft EA, because it's a little wonky from a NEPA practitioner standpoint to do an individual EA and then transition to a programmatic and do a whole new one and then do subsequent individual EAs as well. That's just kind of procedurally and legally a really weird thing to do. So yeah, this is going to be pushed out considerably. I do also just want to note that there are a couple of things in their email that are concerning, maybe, that just the group should be aware of. One is that they are looking to push out some of those analyses that you mentioned, Heather, would not even potentially be contained in the programmatic EA. The hydrology, sediment sampling, change in fluvial geomorphology, all of that, they're potentially going to do in subsequent NEPA analysis. So this task force wouldn't even necessarily have that information in the next round of an EA, which takes about a year to, well, now is required to be done within a year. It would be potentially, if they deemed it necessary to analyze in future EAs. And that's also another issue in the fourth paragraph down, the third sentence that ends with parentheses or supplemental EA. just so that everybody knows, an EA ends typically in what's called a FONSI. That's not the actor FONSI, but it's a finding of no significant impact. So they're saying that all of their future assessments are going to come up with a no significant impact for their preferred alternatives. They're not going to carry out the larger analysis called an EIS. So just again, we may not see an analysis of these issues, period, and if we do see them, they're telling us that their results are always going to show no significant impact. So just want to put that out there.
How can you know what the results are going to show?
They don't. But they're saying that they're going to carry out EAs, and EAs end in a finding of no significant impact. In EIS, you can have significant impacts in your conclusions and still pick your alternative or somebody else's alternative. You just have to do a much more robust analysis and show, even if your preferred action has significant impacts, that all the other alternatives have more or greater significant impacts when you're choosing your option over the others. But an EA, you have to find no significant impacts, or if you find significant impacts, you're immediately doing an EIS.
EIS stands for?
Environmental Impact Statement. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Better? Okay. All right.
So I think the good news from that is that this task force, the city and the park district, have more time to evaluate some of the things that I think have been concerning to us in making this determination, including the water levels. And I'll pause my comments there because I think that probably leads nicely into item 6 on our agenda, and I will hold off on those pieces until you get through the rest of the agenda.
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
You have to be fairly close to the microphone.
Yeah. Now can you hear me? Lean into it. I'm leaning all I can lean. I got this desk here that keeps me from going any closer.
Yeah, I got the belly here.
Yeah.
I have a question for staff regarding this letter. In the third paragraph, it says that they're going to conduct additional public and agency review period later this summer that will reflect this procedural change. I couldn't understand you. Are they going to have additional public comment type meetings or presentations?
That is my understanding, but we have not gotten a whole lot of feedback from them on exactly what that means and how that will be structured yet.
Okay, thank you.
If they do the EA in accordance with NEPA, they should be doing another 30-day public comment period. They should. There's some ways that they can get around it, but they should be doing that. Okay. Additionally, if they're going to do follow-up EAs, the city has the right to request to be a cooperating agency in those if you want. They don't have the requirement to say yes to you, but the city can always request.
Okay. Any other questions on that? So I guess we just wait. We don't. We're kind of flying. This is new area for us. Can you hear? No? How about now? Let's not get personal here. That's good. All right. Let's look at the agenda item number 5, subcommittee reports on the submitted questions. Have each of the subcommittees reviewed the questions that we received last meeting? So, environmental, do you want to go first?
I think you got the Army Corps study subcommittee here first, but we'll go first if you want us to.
No. I was going by the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, we put together a number of questions that we're hoping that the consultant can go over. I think I actually listened to what most people are most concerned about at the very bottom, the hydrological modeling. We requested that the consultant look at the change if just St. Charles is removed, if St. Charles is removed and Geneva is removed. That would have a compounding effect on our water levels. Also asked for several questions about relating to stormwater discharge and water quality and sediment quality testing in the pool, the sediment immediately behind the dam, in front of the dam. water quality testing, and we've received a lot of comments about people stating positions that water quality would change if the dam was removed. We're just trying to get the hard data of what water quality parameters actually look like, so that we can, help the city council make decisions, but also help educate all of the citizens here. Fish assemblage survey, and per the request, we added in there an algae species and density survey as well.
Okay. So where do you go from here?
I think you guys are taking these questions and getting a consultant and going to put out an RFP. I don't recall if we were going to see that RFP or the responses, so I'd be interested to hear what the city's contracting protocol looks like.
I can't answer that right now. I don't know what we can have.
I'm sorry, I missed just the first part of that question in terms of the...
He asked what's next, and I said, well, I think you all were taking the questions to go and do an RFP for a consultant, and I didn't know if we were seeing that RFP before it went out, or what the responses were, or helping to craft the analysis after the fact.
So that sort of does get into that sixth agenda item.
Yeah.
So maybe just for the public's benefit, real quick, Chair Cook, if I may, the discussions that are being had about the subcommittees right now and the questions that are raised, the intent of staff is to take those questions that have been fleshed out to an RFP process, RFQ process, to engage a consultant to narrow down a scope of services to address some of the things that I'll hold off on getting into. But that is the intent of these questions. These are the things that the subcommittee and task force as a whole have narrowed down of importance and vital importance to making the decision about the removal of the dam, and are going to need some professional assessment on them. I think beyond the scope of what staff would offer somebody a little bit more specialized in nature. So these questions would be taken as part of that process, correct?
Okay, so I'm guessing that most of you understand what she just said, but when she refers to RFP and RFQ, RFP is request for proposal, I guess?
Yes, yep.
And RFQ is request for qualifications?
Quote.
What?
Request a quote.
Quote, sorry, quote, well, qualifications, quote, who cares? And that's when you put it out there, and then, contractors or consultants will submit their proposals, et cetera, or their quotes. So, anything? All right. Next issue would be the recreational.
All right. So recreation, a lot of ours boils just down to high quality maps. It's kind of what we've seen in the past, I'd say is sort of inadequate, and so making sure that we're getting high quality maps, so things that we can look at on a computer rather than a printed page, so that we can zoom in, we can pan, we can move around, and then just general accessibility things like using contour lines rather than simply colors. Some of the previous maps that have come out, it's been really difficult for me to determine, the difference between green-blue and blue-green. Louder? Okay, sorry about that. So things to include on the maps are the basics that we've already talked about as far as depth, width, speed of the water, but also to really specify recreationally relevant water levels. So rather than saying high, medium, low, to specify 250, 500, 1,000, 2,000, and 4,000. To look at on these maps, to be able to have layers on these maps, to look at what property right now is available for fishing from the shore. We've got a lot of public property and private property, but not all public property is allowing fishing right now. On the maps, looking at property owners, so not only looking at what's public, what's private, as far as what's accessible, but like who are the actual entities that own these properties, because as we look at accessibility, that's going to be important. And then as we look at things as far as shoreline restoration or invasive species management, it's going to be important to know who the stakeholders are that own property on the river so we can contact them. And specifically looking at the entire region. So I think we talked last time about from Geneva all the way up to South Elgin Dam, right? It's 9.5 miles, and we're kind of all connected together, even though all of that property doesn't specifically lie within St. Charles. We're all connected on one river, and what affects the people up in South Elgin, it's going to come down and affect us.
Okay, that's fair. Any comments or questions? All right, the Economic Impact Subcommittee.
Okay, so Ryan and I went over our 20 questions, and then we narrowed it down to 5 questions. Basically, it addresses more activities if the water level drops. I can read those questions if you want, the 5 questions. Are these going to be posted on the website?
We can't do that once those are finalized, correct?
Would you like me to read them?
Yes.
Okay. So our first question is, how many people, activities, programs, et cetera, utilize the river? With the new water level, what river-related activities would no longer be feasible? What activities can continue? And would there be new activities available? What is the economic impact of the remaining viable usage, i.e. fishing, kayaks? What is the estimated tax revenue forecast with and without the dam? What is the current and future cost of maintaining the dam annually? So those were the questions that we chose.
Okay. And you can see many of these questions with the different committees overlap. Not entirely, but several of them from each category. So we covered that. Now the Army Corps report.
Yeah, we came up with 5 questions as well, and like you said, they overlap a bit. I mean, the first one was to take a detailed look at what the depth would be at different levels of water, et cetera. Brian explained it much more detailed than what we did, but you know, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to determine from the maps that they provided, the color maps, as to where there would be difficulty and at what times of year, et cetera, and what activities would be restricted. That's a very important one, I think, for everybody. The next question was all about the non-dam infrastructure and exposure to it. The river wall out here obviously has fallen down. They're filling it, you know, as best as possible with blacktop and stuff, but there's more than that. There would also be, if the dam came out, there's going to be a whole bunch of land that will be exposed at least at certain times of the year, and what's the plan for that, and who's going to pay for that? That's not part of dam reconstruction or removal. You know, that's a big expense, or potential big expense. What's the impact on some of the other infrastructure like Boy Scout Island, paddle wheel boats, et cetera, if the dam's simply removed and not modified in some way as some of the plans have suggested. And the third question, what's the optimal way for the river to contribute economically to the city? You know, right now the river is an asset, but it's not actively used except in relatively small pieces like the paddle wheel boats in Potawatomi, the Fearsome Creeks, but in other towns across the country, the rivers are much more integral to the whole downtown area. And is there an impact that could be measured or identified for St. Charles? And is that something, I guess it ties to your question about tax revenues, et cetera. You know, other towns have done things that have made all that, the cost of the other infrastructure, or covered that anyway. The fourth question was the estimated cost to the city of retaining the dam, rebuilding or removing the non-dam infrastructure, and the maintenance of the dam itself. Again, that's kind of repeated with some of the other groups. And then the last one was the cost and impact of adopting an alternative plan with the concept of maintaining the impoundment north of the railroad trestle, yet improving safety, fish mussel migration, recreational opportunities, et cetera. So achieving many of the goals that the Corps outlined, but not all, but also creating other opportunities and other advantages that the city may want to consider.
Okay, good. You know, it seemed that, now I'll go to the next item about the agenda number 6, the process of soliciting professional services, but I think we can start out by saying that each of these areas, in my opinion, you all can correct me if you like, but that the hydrology study or impact, especially as to the height of the water and where it's going to impact if there is a dam or if there's no dam, is kind of centralizing. So Heather, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thank you. I think you were leading into exactly what I was going to touch on a little bit. I think that the task force to this point has accomplished 2 vital purposes. And the first was identifying some of these important unanswered questions that the Army Corps did not address in their report that are left lingering that we need to address and expose. And then the second is demonstrating the importance of this to the public, both the residents and non-residents. So I think at this point, conversations that both the city staff and Park District staff have had stress the importance of engaging a hydrologist, a stormwater engineer, somebody of that nature to analyze all of these questions that are left lingering, to give the tools to the task force as well as the city and the Park District to be able to make some of these decisions that the Army Corps and IDNR are asking us for. So we are not suggesting from a staff perspective, I've heard the word pause being thrown out a lot. What we are discussing right now is creating a scope of services and going out for either an RFP, and in our situation, an RFQ process would be a request for qualifications, just some of the statutory obligations with engaging more professional nature services like engineers. So we would be looking at developing that, and once that scope is developed, we would suggest then scheduling the next task force meeting so that could be reviewed by this body before we actually put that out to the public. And then once that study is undertaken and we have some of those results back, then we would schedule the subsequent meetings after that.
So, with your experience, what would you project or speculate as to the timing that we'll be able to do each of those things?
I think just between some of the public meeting schedules that we have going on between both the Park District and the city, I would anticipate a couple months would be necessary to get that together from a staff level and then bring it back here.
When you say get that, but you mean the
Scope of services and a potential RFQ or RFP, correct? Because we would need to engage both boards and that as well, and with timing of meetings, we would just want the buy-in from both of those two taxing bodies as well.
And so would that go out for bid then, or would it be put out, right?
Correct. We would put that out under our normal processes once we actually get the approval from both of those boards as well as this task force.
And then I'm going to put you on the spot again. So a couple of months to get that, and then would that include the time frame to put it out?
With the couple months would just be to actually develop and prepare it for issuance. Once we got the approval of all three of those groups, then we would actually issue it, get those reports back, and then get the proposals back, at which point we would talk at a staff level and bring that approval in some form of an intergovernmental agreement or signing off with one of the bodies to get that started.
So your best guess to get the whole process done to have a meaningful and quantitative report, or whatever we want to call it, for us to deal with would take from this date till when, do you think?
I would anticipate about 2 months for the development of that RFP and RFQ, and then probably an additional 3 to 4 to gather the information necessary and produce reports from that engineer. And these are estimates, but I would estimate a total of 6 months.
Okay.
For the environmental stuff, a lot of that's going to have to be done in the spring or very early winter, because you actually need stormwater to measure the stormwater contaminants.
And I think that's completely relevant to that point. There are going to be things that are necessary, but what I do want to stress about this is not going to stop any process, but with the Army Corps delaying and changing their process, it gives us more time to be able to fully analyze those items.
I think it's important for all of you to understand that too. We're not just putting this up on a shelf and forgetting it for 6 months or 4 months, whatever it may be. We need to get that information in to be able to go forward with the whole process.
And just to be completely clear, there will be no decisions made as to support for removal of the dam until after all of those items come back. So this allows us just an opportunity to really look at these issues and then create more public engagement.
Okay, comments?
Just to clarify, Heather, or Jim, so I heard that correctly, the Army Corps has not given us any sort of timeline on their response or follow-up to the...
No.
That's correct.
Okay. So that would, I guess my second part of that question would be, I think some of that information is going to be vital as we prepare our information or solicit the opportunity to gather additional information based on what our specific needs are, if that makes sense.
Okay. Other comments? Yes.
Just going back to the letter from the Army Corps of Engineers, I don't know, Heather, or maybe Conrad, you can speak to it. I noticed in the letter it said there will be additional coordination with the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office. So I'm assuming that has to do with the adjacent landmark buildings, the building we're in, the municipal building and the Hotel Baker, and anything else along the river that is historic. So do you know anything about that, how that works, or?
I am not an architect. I am not a, specialist in there, but they're talking about basically 106 analysis, Section 106 of, Historic Preservation Act, I think, that
I didn't mean to put you on the spot,
Yeah,
so if
no,
you don't have the, it's okay. If you
I'm
don't-
usually good with my acronyms, but I can't get that one. So Section 106, I believe, is the Historic Preservation Act, that they have to go through and make sure that their action is not going to adversely affect any of those protected buildings, and they're supposed to take an inventory. They didn't do that in this current draft EA, so I'm guessing that they're
Yeah,
realizing
because that's
that.
the first time I saw that, and I thought that was interesting to
I think that they're having a little bit of a learning moment
Yeah.
with this.
Okay, good to know.
I can tell you that if they do find that there are historic structures or there's an impact from the historic preservation perspective, then they will need to get a report from the state historic preservation, I don't know if it's called commission or whatever. And I guess what I'm not experiencing a lot of frustration right now, maybe later I will, but you can see this is going to take some time. We're not going to have an answer or even the information we need from the various agencies that are going to impact our ability to process the effects for a while, which is, I tend to be a little more impetuous. I like to get things done faster than that, but there you go.
You know, one of the things about the Corps in doing this, I think, is had done us a big favor. The original timeline they gave us was going to mean that decisions were being made without a lot of basis of fact, and a lot of emotional stuff would be involved, et cetera. But it's not going away. I mean, the question of the Corps has a national mandate to look at every dam, across the country. So it's going to come up again. So, it's prudent upon us that we make sure that we keep moving forward and have a plan for what we want to do with the dam, almost, even though we don't have a date to shoot for, but we just know that it's coming up in the very near future. It may be a year from now, it may be 2 years from now, but it's coming down the pipeline, and so we need to be prepared as to what it is we want to do with the river and the dam in particular, but the ramifications of that, on the shoreline, on historic things, on fish, et cetera, so.
That's true.
So I've got a question or a point about the periods of time where city staff will be working, we may not have anything to go over. Would it be fruitful for us during one of those months to invite IDNR and Army Corps of Engineers staff here to have a meeting and present their thoughts and processes, and maybe we get to ask them a few questions. I've spoken with the IDNR staff. I've spoken with the Corps folks. They are interested, but I think it would take an invite from us.
I can't see if that'd be a problem. Heather, you have any comments?
We can certainly reach out to them and ask them that question. I know that I think with all of the changes that they're undergoing right now, they may be a little bit hesitant to do that in a public forum and create that type of setting, but I think it's definitely a worthwhile question for them, and we can certainly coordinate that.
Okay. I don't see how it could hurt, although I think we need to have a prepared presentation for them as far as what kind of questions they're going to ask.
That, I think, would be fair, to present them what we're looking for and, what we're curious about. I think that's very fair.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so, public comment. Excuse me, can I ask you if you'd like to speak to... What? Could I ask you to step up forward and make your comments? I'm sorry?
Wheelchair.
Can you have a microphone?
Sure. Yeah. Just this one.
Are we doing public comments now?
Yes.
Okay.
I personally don't think we can trust the Army Corps of Engineers. Most of the information they've given us is over 20 years old, and most of it is falsified. So by having them come in with their own agenda, I think we really have to take a close look at that.
I could understand.
He said that we could not trust the Army Corps of Engineers because the data sets they used are 20 years old, and he believes that they have been falsified.
Well, that'd be a good question for them when they show up here and we get some questions, I guess.
That's true.
Jim, can we ask the audience to give their name and?
Yes. Can you give your name and your address, please?
Yeah, my name, George Rodman. My address, 1452 River Road, South Elgin.
Yes, you did before. Thank you.
Sure.
Somebody else?
Thomas?
Tom Anderson, 712 Horn. A lot of rumors are going around on dams, and I'm curious what we know. 3 dams. Is Aurora keeping their dam because of water? Is Elgin keeping their dam because of water supply needed? Do we know or don't know? That rumor's going around. I came here to find out answers. We don't know yet. They haven't decided anything.
I don't believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that we have the definitive answer for those.
No, okay, so that's a rumor. Number 3 is the Carpentersville dam. Is it gone yet, or will be, or does anybody know?
It's not gone yet.
Not gone
No,
yet.
it's not.
That's been the answer for the last 3 years.
It's supposed to be any day now, I think.
Yeah.
Wait, one at a time, what did you say now?
It was supposed to be any time.
Speak to the microphone.
It was supposed to be any time coming up. Originally, it was supposed to be in June, and then I forgot what the delay was, but.
Yeah, I think they had an issue with their bidding procedures and had to redo them, but they are intending to finalize that removal.
And I did ask at another meeting, I asked the Forest Preserve if there was any way we could get some sort of a study of water quality after the dam is moved, and if they had actually done any water quality study before the dam. But it'd be nice to have a comparison of a before and after.
Thanks for having the meeting. My name is Ed Marth. I live on Allen Lane, so I'm not close to the river, and I hope it doesn't come up close to me. But my question is, there is some tangential kind of reference to economic development, and I've read what I can. I haven't read the whole reports, but it seems to me what's good for people boating on the river, fishing on the river, businesses that may front on the river. But has anybody been looking at the potential economic benefit of whatever is done with a dam, if there is a dam, to make it part of the beautification of the downtown? People don't go to Buffalo, New York to eat buffalo wings as much as they go there to see Niagara Falls. And I think people spend a lot of money on water features for personal property and businesses, and we have one right here, and if there's some way of satisfying what has to be satisfied with respect to the maintenance and the age of the dam, if there is anything left where water flows over, if it can be made part of the attraction of downtown. Lots of money spent on restaurants and getting people to walk around town, building more garages, but what this is, it has, I think, greater potential to be of interest. Lots of people walk over the bridge and look at it, and I think it can attract people besides the restaurants and the drinking. That's all.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment about that, or no? There was a task force that was done about 12 years ago that was between the Forest Preserve, the city, the Park District, and the River Corridor Foundation that looked exactly at what your question is. And a plan was created called the Active River Plan. And there is a website that has all the features. We did a nationwide search for consultants, and they put together this plan, and it's been sitting and talked about for, it's almost 12 years now, but it addresses exactly the point you're talking about. And I ended up chaperoning a group of about 20 of the key individuals in town down to Greenville, South Carolina, to see what a river, what the impact could be on the economics of a community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you to our last speaker there. Brought up some good points. Thank you to the community, Chairman Cook, and the committee. So we had a lot of questions as far as, I'm Christian Plopple. Nice to meet you from St. Charles. We had a lot of questions as far as like what additional studies would be happening, which is great. We would love to see those, have access to those, but I know in due time that'll come. A lot of the gentlemen up here mentioned them as well, but I believe I'm going to be addressing Mr. Rabchuk. Is that right? So my question is more specific, and maybe some other gentlemen could have the answers as well. Is there a threshold of how many businesses or economic impact amount for these studies to justify saving and keeping the dam in place? And are these studies taking account all the businesses utilizing and on the Fox, or strictly only in St. Charles? And I guess more information just for me is like, who exactly is gathering this information? If you had some response, that'd be great. Thank you.
Does anyone want to respond?
That's kind of what you guys were talking about, isn't it? I know.
I think one of our questions was, what is the estimated tax revenue forecast with and without the dam? So there would be a comparison, I guess. But a consultant would be, a qualified consultant would have to answer that question, but great point.
But as far as like a natural economic threshold, whether it's going to trigger a decision,
I think we're just collecting the data and the information, and we just forward it on to the council, and we'll make that determination when it gets, I mean, maybe the consultant will dig a little deeper than this general question, but great point.
Hi, gentlemen. Greatly appreciate you all meeting again with us after the email that came out from the Corps. I did have one concern in that email that I didn't hear captured, and that is that they say they're going to do this holistic, broad EA, programmatic EA, which is not really getting into the nitty-gritty details of environmental assessments. And then they say they're going to ask each of the municipalities to sign up for a participation in their program and not do any detailed analysis until they've actually got you signed up for it. And it seems like they're kind of putting the cart before the horse there, and they're forcing you all into a corner where you get further and further down the line, where you've already made agreements that you're participating in a program, yet you have no input into the details of that program and how the detailed environmental analyses are actually going to be performed to deal with some of the serious questions that exist here, like the wetlands, and who's going to pay for the replacement or repair of the wetlands, and the soil mitigation issues, and the propagation of the soil downstream. And there's so many detailed environmental questions. They're going to have a very broad, not far-reaching, opposite of far-reaching approach. It's going to be a whitewash. And here you are signing up and agreeing to it. And I just wanted to, I'm sure you're all thinking about that when you read that. I didn't hear that brought up in the discussion, and I think that there's a serious flaw in that approach. So I just wanted to pass that comment along. I'm sure you're all thinking about it as well, but we're all thinking about it too. So thank you very much.
Could you give us your name?
Yes, I did. I'm Steve Berthaud. Yes, I live in Geneva actually, but I'm very concerned about all the stuff that's happening up and down the river, and so I've been trying to be an active participant and help and communicate with you folks. I think the more that we get good communication through all the municipalities up and down this river, the better off we're going to be as a community on whole. So I'm very concerned that the total community is just being bypassed by this edict and this mandate to get rid of a way of life around here, and it's very concerning to me. So, but thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
My name is Arthur Lemke. I'm a citizen here in St. Charles, living on 3214 Black Hawk Trail. We talked about a national mandate, and it seemed to imply that, and on a global basis, you'd have to say, what is the impact of fish? And if you put a dam in, does it block fish migration? And it's not unusual to see people fishing. I spend a lot of time in South Elgin over at the Doer Forest Preserve, and it's not unusual to see people fishing there in fish lanes, lines, and so forth. So the assumption that nationally we have to look at this, yes, We have to look at it, but it doesn't mean that we don't have fish up and down. And that study needs to be done in more detail. Is it just we need zebra mussels? Huh? What fish are able to can you fish above and below the dam for the same type of fish? And in fact, I plan to go. I'm told which plane to take. We're scheduling a trip to Montana to visit, among other things, the Thompson Falls Dam and the Essex Dam. And I'll tell you, one of the first times I was out there, I was surprised at the kind of fish I caught in the tributaries to the Columbia River, which happens to be Flathead Lake. I've gone fishing in Flathead Lake. I have pictures of that. So the idea that, well, you put a Thompson Falls Dam or you put a Grand Coulee Dam, you're not going to get salmon. That really does, each river needs to be studied, and has it really blocked fish? Or in the case of the Thompson Falls Dam, the fish ladder, does it not work? That's a question that maybe the Thompson Falls fish ladder could be fixed, or the one out here could be fixed or improved. And don't pull the dam out because we can't go fishing up there. That's not a legitimate answer. When you look at it globally, you have a concern, but you need to look at it specifically for the Fox River.
Good evening, I'm Patrice Berthel from Geneva. So I'm hearing from the committee that you plan on going out to various consultants to get more information. Elgin's Mayor Captain has publicly stated that they have spent $500,000 to date in trying to determine the impact of his, quote, this poorly planned project. So my question to this committee is, what do you have budgeted in order to pursue the information required in order to make an informed decision?
At this time, we have no determined budget. We're going to see what the potential cost would be for consultants, and the Park District, the City Council are going to meet and decide what we're willing to allocate to that effort.
So $500,000 to date for Elgin.
Say that again?
$500,000 to date.
That is a
for
different
Elgin.
project than St. Charles Dam. They're looking at relocating an entire water supply.
Certainly, but this is not even the cost to do the relocation. This is just trying to determine the impacts of the removal of the dam.
But they have different influences than we do. I mean, I can't say that we're going to end up having to spend $500,000 to determine. Maybe spend more, I doubt, or maybe less.
I don't, but be prepared. I'm wondering if you have been prepared, if you are prepared. What's in your budget for this?
But we don't have a budget yet.
Okay.
The process that we're going through as a committee right here is not a committee to make decisions per se about what's going to happen, what we're going to do, et cetera, as far as the dam. We're on a fact-finding mission, so to speak. And among the facts that we will be finding will be the projected costs to obtain more information and to hire consultants, et cetera. And we will decide what we're going to spend to that end.
This next comment goes back to the prior gentleman who had asked about a threshold. Have you determined the cost yet of keeping the dam? And if not, why has that not been, why not? The cost of keeping the dam, the liability insurance, the maintenance, have those been quantified yet in order to make a proper decision on?
Yeah, that's one of the questions. I mean, we're finding the information right now because, I mean, to take information forward to the City Council doesn't have any information and not even close to information to make a decision. So, I mean,
I understand you have an economic subcommittee on the economic impacts of this, and that would seem to be one of the first steps in doing a cost-benefit analysis is how much is it going to cost to keep it?
That's actually question number 5. What is the current and future costs of maintaining the dam annually? That's going to go to the consultant to review.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you very
one
much.
of the questions. Yeah, you bet.
Hi. I'm Al Watts. I'm Community Engagement Director for Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley. We're at 8 Indiana Street in St. Charles, the Beat House. For those who are not familiar with our organization, we're a 50-year-old nonprofit, operates 4 local historic sites, and educates about historic preservation. So I just wanted to add to what Brian and Conrad were talking a little bit about Section 106 and the historic resources. We've been communicating with the Army Corps of Engineers, trying to help however we can with this situation. They have added us as a consulting party for the Section 106 review on the potential impact of historic resources if the dams are removed in St. Charles, Geneva, and Batavia. We're very specific in that space. As a consulting party, essentially we're going to be consulted during the Section 106 process. So what is a Section 106, as Conrad already kind of mentioned? It's part of the National Historic Preservation Act, and it's a required review from that act that there be a review of any impact to historic resources for any project using federal dollars or needs a federal permit, and also requires that if there is harm, potential harm, that there be mitigation done for that. So there could be a lot of different things, and we could go on and on about the opportunities there for what that could look like. What I'm doing is I'm going to each of the historic preservation commissions and getting their input as far as what they think are the historic resources that could be impacted by the dam. So in this particular case, St. Charles, for example, is not just this building in the Baker. We also need to look north at what might change with Potawatomi Park. We need to look south, what might have impact with the Piano Bridge, things like that. So I'm trying to get a list from all the historic preservation commissions so that I can then, or we can then give that information to the, to the State Historic Preservation Office in Illinois is who will conduct the Section 106. Obviously, we're not the only ones who can be in a consulting party. If you wanted to have consultants that you're considering include that in part of what they consult on, absolutely. That's not a bad thing. But just so you're aware, that is something that we're a part of, and we're going to do our best to help. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So you're saying your review is going to happen regardless of what the city does in terms of a consultant? That you're going to identify all the historic or potential historic ramifications, irrespective of what the city does with the broader study of hydrology or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, our members want to understand the historic preservation consequences, if there are any. And so, yes, we are doing that on our own. If the city wants to do some of their own, that's fine. We're happy to work and collaborate with that if you get a consultant, because, you know, we're not going to come up with all the answers, you know what I mean? Right. Unfortunately, we have a good relationship with the State Historic Preservation Office so that, you know, we can communicate back and forth with them and help them find some of the information they need. I know that they already did a Section 106 review, actually, for all the dams, and some of their information we believe was incomplete. And so, you know, that's one of the kinds of things that now being more directly involved, that we can be aware of that and go, hey, wait a minute, you need to look at this. Maybe you didn't see this or that. So
has your study already started then?
In a manner of speaking, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't say we're going to create like a report or anything like that necessarily, but I just want to have information that we can give to the State Historic Preservation Office and, you know, answer questions that the Corps might have. Particularly if there's needs to be some kind of mitigation, we want to be able to be helpful in that regard. So providing ideas or potential solutions for any mitigation that may need to be done. I'm not even going to try to speculate what that might be, but, you know, if you're going to make some kind of harm, the Corps has to do something to mitigate that in some way.
Will your findings be in the revised Army Corps of Engineers report through the Illinois Preservation?
I doubt we'll be specifically cited, but yeah, I mean, when there is a Section 106 review, we have the opportunity to have input in that, yes.
But will the city see that report of the findings, or do we have to go to you to get those findings?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I would think it'd be good practice for the Army Corps of Engineers to provide that information to the city, but I don't know that they will necessarily, or if they're required to. No, we're a separate nonprofit organization. We have no affiliation with the Army Corps, except that they have added us as a consulting party, which anybody, even an individual citizen, can ask to do that. So, for example, I'm going to make sure that you guys know if there is a Section 106 review done, I want to make sure you guys know that it happened and that what has been found in there. That's what my intent is to try to be a liaison if that information isn't provided to you by the state or the Army Corps.
Do you have a date of initiation for the 106 review?
No, my understanding is a Section 106 review will only be conducted when a decision has been made for a dam to be removed, and then there will be what's called the design phase, and that is when they will conduct a Section 106 review. So like if St. Charles were to say, go ahead and remove the dam, that's when they would do the Section 106 review, is my understanding.
So they have an impact determination for their activities on historical properties already in their draft EA. You all did not contribute to that impact analysis.
Correct.
Okay.
That was, they consider that to be, they only looked at the dams specifically, whether they were historic or not. And I would argue that the review at that time was not very well done, or was not as inclusive as it could be.
Yeah, they actually said that there was no historical properties within a mile upstream or downstream, so that's why I was curious.
Yeah, that's not, that's why we contacted the Army Corps, and we're grateful with the support of the State Historic Preservation Office that they did allow us to be a consulting party, so that we can make sure that they make that information clear.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah. Al, I have a question. Do you have any? Do you have an understanding of after? So the work will be done after there was a finding that the dam should be removed. Do you have any understanding what criteria that identifying historical structures would have on revision of their opinion or any kind of impact in their opinion? How does that work? Is I guess my question simply.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if they find that there's historic resources that will be impacted, and let's say they can't figure out how to mitigate it, then theoretically they could then decide not to remove the dam, if that was something that was the case. So honestly, one way to slow down the process is through the Section 106. It does slow things down for things like this. It's going to be important, however, that you help them understand what those historic resources are, why they are important, and there is a criteria for that. It's very easy. This building and the Baker are National Historic Landmarks, so they should consider those as part of their review, because anything that's on the National Historic Registry, they have to.
Al, I will rely on your expertise, and knowing that you're in charge of that makes me incredibly comfortable.
Well, I'm happy to help out, however, so. Any other?
Just a quick question, Al. Thank you for your due diligence. The process that you're using, that you're talking about, that information that you gather, I think it goes back to Brian's question, that's going to go to the Historic Office of Preservation, who then is going to leverage that. The Army Corps is going to leverage that information?
So the way that it works is, because this is a federal project, technically, the Army Corps of Engineers will submit a Section 106. They'll submit a bunch of paperwork, and the people that make the determination on that Section 106 is the State Historic Preservation Office. Okay. So it's actually them who I will be working with.
So they'll reach out to you and say, okay, we need this particular section, and could you help gather that information?
Yes, that's what they're supposed to do.
And your area, again, can you tell me?
Yeah, we're trying to stay focused on just St. Charles, Geneva, and Batavia.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Steppen. I'm a lifetime resident of St. Charles. A couple questions that I know you all were talking about this in fairly general terms. The the original Army Corps of Engineers report had some what appeared to be before and after photos of dam removals that had taken place on the Des Plaines River. That, I believe, happened within the scope of 10 or 15 years ago. To your knowledge, is that still seen as an analogy? Is it still sort of seen as this is what the river could look like 10 years from now or 15 years from now? Is that something any of you have knowledge of?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. I have no idea how that river has changed in the last 15 years. I believe, though, if I remember correctly, that the page with those pictures, that section was fairly dense riparian vegetation rather than a urbanized corridor.
I think it was like I want to say Willow Springs, but what it might be useful to do is to have, if the Des Plaines River has gone through this process before, it might be good for us to see what the potential, if that is seen as an analogy, what our river could look like. It might be an improvement without the dam, right? So there's a chance that if we see what this looks like in the future, that might help clarify some things for people as they think ahead.
Well, that's one of the things we're going on for the study, to get experts to tell us, instead of just anecdotally relying on a river that we can't. Like, we don't have the expertise to know if that's a similar river to the other one. We need experts to tell us. So we're looking to get very much to analogous situations based on studying the rest.
Right. There are pictures of that in the original report, so I'm wondering if they were trying to show us what it looks like 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, et cetera. The second question I know that I've heard my neighbors talk about is long-term costs. I know there's an economic group working on that. I'm hoping that with that study comes a pretty clear assessment of the current status of the dam. What is its current physical condition? Is it something that's going to need major repairs in the upcoming years? If people, the residents of our city, are going to be on the hook for maintaining or repairing the dam in the future, I think it would be fair if we knew what we could be on the hook for. It's like the Carfax for a used car. What do we know about the current status of the dam? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just to jump in, so the dam that you're speaking of, I think is the Hoffman Dam, and I can't remember what town that's in. And so you can look for that. And just based on what I've seen, it's sort of, the results are mixed, right? Because they showed the pictures and they showed the habitat restoration, and that, from the aspect of habitat restoration, looks great. But there are sort of mixed opinions on recreation and how recreation happens and occurs. I know Mike and I both have kind of paddled that river fairly extensively, and so we are using that to inform our opinions when we get projections for our river.
Yeah, I don't mean to shut across the room, but it would be useful to know how that played out. In what ways did it play out well, and what ways did it not?
Hi, my name is Stu Fishman. I live at 6N 230 River Drive. I'm also the vice president of the Novak Park Community Club. A couple of questions I had, and it didn't tie in with this until it happened, but I was sitting home watching TV one day in the evening, and I saw this beautiful commercial from St. Charles and the Fox River and the dam, and some of you from the city council must have approved that, correct? At some point.
Those are done through the Business Alliance.
I'm sorry?
Those are done through an outside organization that's not controlled by the city. That's the Business Alliance.
But for the city, right? It was done for the city. Right. So somewhere there had to be people that said, okay, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars to do this commercial. And I've seen it run more than one time, and it really makes our city look fantastic. And to change that, I just don't see that happening. It wouldn't have the draw. The other thing I wanted to ask is that I keep hearing dam removal, moving the dam upriver underneath the railroad trestle, which I'm sure is going to have an exorbitant cost. But we don't really hear anything about dam modification. And there's been, I know that a group that I belong to has sent in stuff to the city council and the mayor about maybe doing a step-down ladder or anything that would include taking the boil out of the dam and making it less dangerous, because in the beginning that was a huge issue. Now all of a sudden we're really not hearing about it that much. So is that off the table now, or are we still looking at modification?
Well, that's not part of our charge, because we're not looking, basically, at this point, we're looking at the two extremes, removal and not removal.
Right.
And then anything in between will come once we determine those two ends, so to speak. We want to know the two extremes, we want to know how the hydrology will be affected and all that kind of stuff. And so once we have more information, then we can look at alternative, facts toward alternatives. But the resolution of the whole thing will be a city council decision, not ours.
Right. So I guess my last question is, what is your function? I'm a little bit confused here. Are you going to propose to the city council one way or another? You as the committee?
No.
Okay.
Our function is to gather facts, give the public an opportunity to speak also and contribute toward the process. And then when we get to the point that we feel we're done, or to the almost done, we submit to the city council the facts that we have accumulated.
Okay, so now that we know that the Army Corps is going to be taking more time, do you still have a timeline that you're working on about what your recommendation would be?
Well, we'd like to get it done as soon as possible. We're not recommending, we're submitting.
Submitting, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm not trying to play word games,
Right.
but it makes a difference. And frankly, as chairman of this committee, I'd like to see us keep moving forward in a reasonably productive manner and not delay this and procrastinate, because a lot of people care about this issue. And people want to know one way or the other what's going on.
Right.
And so we want to try to we want to try to accomplish our mission as expediently as possible, but we do have factors outside of our control that will determine how fast we can do it.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, one more.
Hi, my name is Doug Denz, 52 years on the river. We have a property on the river and in downtown, and more of a statement than a question. I just wanted to say that I know all of you are volunteers and giving up your time. Just want to say thank you. I know you guys are doing your due diligence, as much as to Heather too, for sometimes it's a thankless job. So I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate you guys being thorough on what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got another one.
One more. That's all right.
Hi, I'm Chris Weiss. I live in St. Charles. So the whole Army Corps engineer study says they want to return the river to how it was naturally, and it flows from Wisconsin to Ottawa, but they only want to remove the dams in Kane County. Does anybody know why that is?
They're not going to remove that topmost dam because they found that there was significant benefits from the boat recreation above that dam.
Okay, so, and they also state that the original purpose of this dam was hydroelectric, I believe, right?
No.
But things change over time, and obviously it's recreation at this point, right?
It was never
So
hydroelectric.
is there a way to have a law or an ordinance to protect our water levels? Whatever the outcome happens to be of this, is there a way that we can do something similar to what Algonquin has done?
Well, I'll grab that. We're a fact-finding body, and the St. Charles City Council is waiting to see what happens, because there are 3 of us on City Council that sit on that. We're very much looking to see what comes out of this, and then we'll use the information from this to help understanding some of the complexities that this body isn't dealing with. So to ask us here, we're just trying to find the facts, but that's a great question for City Council, because that's where, after we find out what's being done, City Council is going to have to take action one way or another, and City Council will be taking action, based on this. But there's not going to be a recommendation coming out of this body.
Sure.
But as an alderman, I'm lockstep with you. But we just have to do things in the right order.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, hearing none. Well, we've determined we can't establish our next meeting until we get further along in the process of finding out what we're going to do with regard to the solicitation of various information from consultants, et cetera. So I guess we really can't set our next meeting yet, can we? Heather?
So as soon as we determine that and coordinate with everybody, we will continue posting both on the city website on the page dedicated to this, the city website itself, as well as all of our social media platforms as we have been doing. So we will publish all those notices as far in advance as we can.
Okay, very good. Any other comments from the board members? Comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.